What's shakin' bacons? It's time for our sort of monthly Star Wars news review. I hope you're all doing amazingly. There's been some interesting news lately that's come out. I'm not going to focus on a slew of different news articles because I really just want to focus on 3 primary tidbits that have come out. Let's get to it, shall we? P.S. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe if you have not already, and make sure you hit a notification bell because apparently that's a thing that YouTube's decided it's gonna do now. Okay, we continue it. We are first going to discuss Monsieur Billy Dee Williams, of course. Now, I had been saving an article about rumors that he'd be coming back because he canceled an appearance at a convention because of filming conflicts. So the rumor was Billy Dee's going to be coming back to the Star Wars universe, and that's why he canceled, because what else would he be filming? And I had that saved to talk to you guys about, and then today, as I sat down to film this, the news started breaking that Mr. Billy Dee is definitely coming back as Lando in episode 9. My first reaction to this is, oh dear God, no. Because I don't want him to get killed off. I am so tired of all of my beloved old characters just getting slaughtered and killed off by this new Disney Star Wars franchise. I don't want to see Billy Dee go the way of Thanos does. You know what I'm saying? I know I'm crossing franchises, but Disney owns them both now, so just bear with me. The Hollywood Reporter, I think, is the first to break the news about Billy Dee reprising as Lando Calrissian. They actually do mention the convention news that I was going to talk to you guys about. Chatter about him joining the production, which begins later this summer, increased when he bowed out of an upcoming sci-fi and pop culture convention. Sources confirmed to the Hollywood Reporter that he is indeed reprising his role as Lando. Sources confirmed. I have a major issue when news outlets just quote sources, and half the time I feel like they're quoting sources that don't exist. This is a pretty concrete rumor, however, so it's possible that this is actually somebody confirming it. However, it's something that I want to encourage you guys, whenever you read any news, whether it's about this or if it's about pop culture, or whether it's about like political news, or whether it's about disasters or anything else, any kind of news that you consume at all, make sure you consider the source and make sure you consider any potential bias. And that's something that I've always tried to tell people to consider. I think I've probably talked about this more on my Twitch stream than here, but make sure you consider source and bias when you are looking at news, because everyone comes from a source of bias, and especially with stuff like this where you have Disney as a huge entity that frequently puts pressure on news outlets to represent their agenda in a positive light. And if you don't believe me, look up the LA Times stuff. Okay, you have to keep that in mind. So I dislike that they just quote sources. I feel like that's way generic and it's just like a front for them to pass off information. Regardless, side tangent. One thing I really enjoy is that they note that the Lando Calrissian character made his suave debut in The Empire Strikes Back. Anyway, they don't really talk about exactly what he's going to be doing as Lando. Part of me wonders if they're bringing him back because he's one of the few remaining characters that they have left here. Part of me also wonders if they're bringing him back to connect with Leia in some way now that Han and Luke are both out of the picture. She needs to have someone from the old original trilogy to connect with. Another part of me is wondering if they're trying to cash in on the popularity of Donald Glover's portrayal of him in Solo, which was one of the biggest accolades that film actually received. I mean, I guess it remains to be seen. I'm just hoping they're not going to kill him off like they've been killing off everybody else. You know, that's really all I can hope for at this point, but it's going to be interesting to see what they're doing. They do mention, of course, that the film is scheduled to release December 20th, 2019, so they are aiming for a Christmas winter holiday type debut. I'm wondering how that's going to go. I think they're going to really try and hit hard on the winter holiday season so more people have more time to go to the theater, especially when they're trying to recoup their losses from Solo, and they're still trying to make back the money that they spent on the franchise. I think they're probably attempting to get the most out of it that they can. The next point of news came out last Friday, and it's talking about Keri Russell getting hired to join episode 9. Now, there were some rumors that they're bringing Mara Jade into the picture somewhere. Whether or not it's going to be anything along the lines or even close to canon Mara is another question entirely. We've got an article here from AV Club, and it is discussing the hiring of Keri Russell to episode 9. I have nothing against Keri Russell. I have a really difficult time separating her image in my mind, though, from the big-headed, curly Felicity character that she played, which I could never quite get into. I do acknowledge she's a very good actress, and my suspicion is that if she's been hired and she's completely new so far to this sequel trilogy, that she is going to be portraying the rumored Mara character. I don't want to just write her off completely. I don't want to write off the character completely. She is older now, she's very experienced, and I've seen her in other films where I thought she did an excellent job. One thing that's very interesting, and another reason why I think that she may have been cast as Mara, is because, as the article notes, the part she was cast for calls for action-heavy fight scenes that utilize the ability to perform tough stunts. That sounds like a pretty Mara part to me. Another rumor that's been floating around about her casting is that she's been cast to play the mother of Rey. Whether or not they think that Mara is going to be Rey's mother, that's another theory that I've heard of that's floating around. I don't know. I guess it remains to be seen. I don't think Keri Russell is a bad choice. However, it depends on what they're going to do with her and how they are best going to utilize her talents. The last bit of news I am going to spend, I don't know how much time I'm going to spend on it. I really wanted to call this to your attention. I've already written about it on my Patreon. I touched on it briefly on the Twitch stream. And the reason why I am hot to trot about this article, which came out July 1st, is because A, it is from a fairly large publication and very well-known reputable source of news for business and finance. B, it is one of the very few articles that I have ever seen where a non-Hollywood connected, at least surface connected Hollywood source has not only come out in defense of the people that had issues with The Last Jedi, but frankly acknowledges the fact that The Last Jedi and Rian Johnson's direction of it has very much so damaged the Star Wars franchise. If you've been tuning into the stream, or if you've caught up on the Patreon posts, you probably know what article I'm talking about. It is this one by The Motley Fool, and I really encourage you guys, I will have links, of course, to all these articles in the description box, but I really encourage you, give this a read if you want to. It's very interesting. Keith Noonan writes about this, is Disney's Star Wars universe imploding? And he discusses that Solo is, of course, destined to go down as a flop. Part of that is because of the boycott from the fans. People just completely lost interest, and they discuss how there's been reports emerging that many of the other Star Wars spin-off films have been put on hold. The article discusses, of course, how Solo actually lost money compared to what they were expecting, which hurts their ability to recoup some of what they spent purchasing the franchise from George Lucas. The article then acknowledges much of the blame is rightly being put on Solo's weak ticket sales, but it looks like The Last Jedi was where things started to come off the rails.
Bingo!
They discuss how the Rian Johnson's Last Jedi cast much of the cliffhangers and enigmatic plot threads and mystery aside, dispensed with major villains, questions of family lineage, and some of the biggest themes in a wanton fashion. Major media coverage generally lavished the film with praise and complimented the film for subversive qualities. A case for defying expectations can certainly be made. It's probably fair to say that many Disney shareholders aren't wild about the idea of subversive Star Wars movies. It's clear that many fans aren't. The article then discusses the huge disparity between the critic scores and the entire audience scores, and discusses how it likely played a huge part in the tanking of Solo's box office scores. And they acknowledge The Last Jedi's treatment of the Star Wars franchise and its classic characters confounded and alienated a significant portion of the series' fans. Making matters worse, Disney employees and media outlets have at times seemed eager to attribute dissatisfaction with recent entries in the franchise to personal shortcomings among the fan base. A tactic that all but guarantees continued controversy. It's probably not a good idea to take a hostile stance towards some of your franchise's biggest fans. Especially true when enthusiasts have played such a big role in sustaining the cultural cachet over the last 40 years. No freaking duh. Mark Hamill even voiced dissatisfaction with it. He did so during numerous press conference appearances, behavior that's pretty much unheard of because these were major issues, and even poor Mark Hamill, as we've discussed before, as we all know, had major problems with this. And I really like that this article, like, it continues, guys. Like, look how long this article is. He just, like, he roasts them so hard. Freaking Keith Noonan, you are the shit, man. He goes on and he says, It seems like Disney proceeded with the expectation that the core Star Wars audience would show up for the new movies no matter what. Wrong. And in response to some of the controversy, Abrams says if you're someone who feels threatened by women, you can find an enemy in Star Wars. There are surely fans upset about the franchise's new focus on bringing in female viewers, which there are a minority that are. Let's acknowledge that fact. And then he says, but there's probably a larger subset of dissatisfied enthusiasts who simply don't think the new movies are very good. Guys, I highly recommend that you continue reading this. This guy just goes ahead and roasts it. And then he talks about how dissatisfaction with the series has actually encouraged a revisiting of love and fondness and nostalgia for the prequels. This article is just brilliant. I highly recommend, if you have the time and the curiosity, you should definitely go check out our boy Keith Noonan, because this is one of not only the most hilarious and honestly accurate roasts of how Disney has handled this situation that I have seen. It's rare to see an article, as I mentioned before I started talking about this, that actually discusses the fact that most fans had genuine, legitimate issues with this movie and aren't just women haters. And I think that this article is fantastic. I really suggest you guys go check that out. That's all the Star Wars news I got for you today. That's all the stuff that I felt was pertinent enough to discuss. We've got Keri Russell potentially being Mara. We've got Billy Dee coming back, hopefully not dying. Of course, we've got our boy Keith Noonan sticking up for everybody while he's roasting how Disney's handling this, because they deserve to be roasted. They're handling this like... I hope you are all doing amazingly and having a wonderful week. Thank you for joining me for our Star Wars news review, and as usual, I will catch you later.